Hi besties, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to a new video. Welcome to a new series, I would say this is gonna be. So I'm basically going to do a lot of parts on every book that I've rated 5 stars since I started reading. And there are quite a lot of books that I've given 5 stars. Just because since the beginning when I started reading, I wasn't that critical with my ratings. I am still not very critical. If I really like a book, I'm probably gonna give it 5 stars. For me, when I give a book maybe 3.5 to 4 stars, that one is a really low rating. And I think literally once I've given a book less than 2 stars. So a lot of the books that I've read, I've given 4.5 out of 5 stars or 5 stars. So this video, this series is gonna be only the books that I've given 5 stars. And I'm gonna do it 10 at a time. So today I'm going to share 10, and in the next video, when I do a part 2, I'm gonna show you more, and so on. I don't know how many parts this series is gonna be, so yeah. And I'm actually going in the order that I've read books, because I went to my Goodreads and scrolled down in my read list. So that is how I'm doing this. I hope you enjoy. Make sure to subscribe down below and turn on the notification bell so you get notified when I upload more videos. And let's get started. Okay, so let's start with Colleen Hoover, because I have 4 books here that I've given 5 stars, and these are just a few because I've rated a lot of Colleen Hoover books 5 stars, but these are just the first few that I rated 5 stars. So let's start with the first book that I ever read in my entire life, which if you follow me for a while, you know this. I have talked about this so much, but this is It Ends With Us. This is literally the first book I read by Colleen Hoover, read from start to finish in my entire life. And this is the book that got me into reading. So that is why I wanted to start this video off with this one. Look up trigger warnings for this book. This is not a romantic, cute, nor spicy book. It has a lot of really harsh topics, and I totally suggest you guys to read this book because, you need to read this book because the second one, which is It Starts With Us, is coming out in October. So read this book before the other one, but I'm so excited for the other one. I read this book, I cried, I fell in love with reading, and this book will always have a special place in my heart. It's not my favorite book of all time, but it was the book that got me into reading, and I love it so much. So I definitely gave it 5 stars, right off the bat. The first book I read, 5 stars. So yeah, I love it so much. And after reading that one, I actually read back to back. I think the next day, I read another book by Colleen Hoover because I read It Ends With Us, and I was okay, I love this author and I loved her writing style, her storytelling, and all that stuff. So I just picked out another book by this author, and I didn't even read the back of the book, nothing. I just started reading. This is Hopeless, and again, this is not a romance story. Look up trigger warnings. This one is a really traumatic, harsh book. Honestly, I feel it's more traumatic than It Ends With Us. It's a masterpiece of a book. It's amazing. I remember I started reading, and for the first half of the book, I thought it was really gonna be a cute high school romance, and a cute high school romance. That is what I was getting from the book while reading it, and all of a sudden, you guys know the freaking Colleen Hoover plot twist. Yeah, it caught me off guard, but it was amazing. I would definitely read this book again. It is so good. It's heartbreaking, but it's so good. So again, this is another book that I gave 5 stars immediately, so fast, and it has stayed a 5 stars. Because sometimes I give book 5 stars because I'm kind of in the moment and I really like the book, and weeks can go by or months, and then I think back at the book and I'm was it really a 5 stars, you know? But I've literally like changed ratings over time with books because, again, that happens to me all the time. But the books that I'm telling you right now have stayed 5 stars. Then I read other books, but then I read Ugly Love, you guys. Okay, Ugly Love was another one that I fell in love with. Like, this book was my favorite book of all time for a solid, I don't know, like 10 months. So I read this book in, I think, a day. I stayed up until like 3 a.m. reading this book, and again, I did not look at the back of the book. I had no idea what this book was going to be about. I just knew TikTok loved it, and I wanted to read it because it was by Colleen Hoover. So I read this book and I loved it. I loved it so freaking much. I loved it so much. It became my favorite book of all time. You guys know this if you follow me for a while. But this year, I kind of like fell out of love with the book. But it's still 5 stars. Like, I love it. But it's not my favorite book of all time anymore. You can go at my last video, which is the summer book recommendations, and you're gonna find out what is my favorite book of all time at the moment. So yeah, I read this book, 5 stars. It was amazing. I still love it. Yeah. And the last Colleen Hoover book that I have here is, okay, I read this book because I was watching a YouTube video. It was Steph Bohr here on YouTube, and like, it was months ago, and she was talking about this book because she gave like book recommendations, and she was talking about this book, and she was like really surprised with the book, and she really liked it. And I had this book sitting in my like TBR bookshelves for a while, and I just did not pick it up until I did because of that video, and I'm so grateful. This is Confess. So this is another one of my favorite books by Colleen Hoover. This is so underrated, and I say underrated because obviously there are other books by other authors who are totally even more underrated, but if we're talking about Colleen Hoover and like a scale of underrated and It Ends With Us, this one is a bit underrated in my opinion. It is amazing. Actually, if you liked It Ends With Us, I always say this, I don't know why I got the same vibe from It Ends With Us in this book. And it's not the same story at all, but I just loved this book. The ending, I think this is one of my favorite endings of all time. It is just so beautiful. And I see you guys' comments on TikTok and over on here on YouTube telling me that you love Confess as well. And yes, because you guys, this book is honestly underrated in my opinion. Okay, those are all the Colleen Hoover books that I'm going to be talking about in this video. Let's go to my other books. So the one that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to put the cover here because I don't have the paperback at the moment. So this book, I never bought the paperback. I read this book from my Kindle, and this was another book that I read in one day, like in one sitting. It was crazy. This is Bad Habit by Charlie Rose. Okay, and I read this book, I started reading it at like 8 a.m. and finished it like at 2 p.m. that same day. This book was what got me into my obsession with Brother's Best Friend. Okay, this one is a spicy book, so if you don't like spicy books, don't read the book. I love that it was spicy. I love that it's a series because this is the first book and there are other 2 books and they all kind of connect. So this was definitely a 5-star read. Again, skim through the synopsis to see if you are gonna like the book, but it's a brother's best friend, grumpy sunshine, kind of spicy. Yeah. Next one, I do have the book. Wait. This one I tabbed, okay? And now I have a pet peeve that I like honestly did not know how to tab my books, and it just drives me insane now because look at how I tabbed this book. What is this? They are all sticking out, and now it's my biggest pet peeve. But this is the book, Crave by Tracy Wolff. This is the first book of her series, the Catmere Academy series. Let's ignore the tabs, but This was one of my first, yeah, it was kind of one of my first fantasy series books that I read. I was really into romance at the moment, but when I picked this book up, well, I immediately bought it because it had a lot to do with like vampires and like werewolves, all that kind of stuff, and like mythical creatures. And you guys know that I'm a sucker for that. I've watched The Vampire Diaries like 5 times from start to finish. I read it in, I don't remember if it was 2 or 3 days, but it wasn't in a day. I think 2, maybe 3, because it's a chunky book. It has a lot of pages. I think it has 500 and something, and the other books are very long as well. It's a story about this girl who her parents die, and she goes to live with her uncle in this school that he has with it, which is Katmere Academy. But this school is in the middle of Alaska. Nobody knows about the school. It's just off the radar and like nobody knows. And she like has to go live with her uncle, and she starts going to the school, but immediately when she gets there, there's something like weird and off about the whole entire school and the vibe of it. The thing about this book that it was so crazy is that the entire book, like this is chunky, the entire book is based on 2.5 weeks of this girl being at this school. Like the first 2.5 weeks. That is insane. It was so good. Like I was so entertained, and like the plot twist and the ending had me hooked. Definitely loved it. Okay, next one that I'm gonna be talking about is the first book in the Off-Campus series by Elle Kennedy. And I wanna talk about this because I'm not really a fan of Elle Kennedy. I only read the Off-Campus series. I did buy the entire Off-Campus series and Briar U series prior to knowing more about the author. I only read the first 3 books from the Off-Campus series. I never read the last one in the novella. So I do have two favorites from the Off-Campus series. The first one is The Deal, which is the first book. This is well, the entire series is a sports romance and a college romance as well. So it's a hockey sports romance. It is spicy. It's kind of funny as well, and I love the romance between the first 2 couples. It's still 5 stars because I really enjoyed it. Okay, so I had to go out for a sec. I have no idea what I was talking about, but I think I was talking about The Deal, and yeah, it's still 5 stars. I loved it, but the Off-Campus series is not my favorite, but I had to put this in here because I did give it 5 stars. Okay, so I don't have the physical copy of this next book, but it's The Cabin by Jacinda Wilder. And first, let me just say, this book is so sad. This book is really, 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 really sad. Just FYI, a disclaimer out there, you're probably gonna cry. It talks a lot about grief. The entire story is about grief and moving on, basically. It's just a masterpiece of a book. It's so underrated. Like, it's so good. So definitely, if you want to read a sad book, or you're interested in reading a book that talks about grief and moving on, this is gonna be the perfect book for you. Okay, also I don't have the physical copy of this next book. So this is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Okay, this was my second Taylor Jenkins Reid book. The first one was Malibu Rising, but it was not a 5 stars for me. But this book is so freaking good. Like, I have so many favorite things about this book. I love the setting. I love the writing style and how the book is written. And the story starts with a journalist that is interviewing Evelyn Hugo because Evelyn Hugo wants this journalist to basically write a memoir of her life, and that is basically the entire book. That is the writing style of it, but you do get kind of like the first perspective story of the entire life of Evelyn Hugo and her life with each of her husbands, because she had 7 husbands. But there is so much more to the story. Like, you would think the entire book is only about these, like, the 7 husbands, but it has a backstory and a more important story behind those 7 husbands. It has a plot twist which had me crying, but it's so freaking good. It's a really good book. I love it so much. It was an easy 5 stars, and if you haven't read this book, please go read it. It's really good. This last book, this is Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas, and I think this is the only book by Penelope Douglas I've given 5 stars. I've only read 3 of them. I've read this one, Punk 57, and Credence. I think that's how you say it. Credence was not my favorite at all. It was interesting, but it was not my favorite since the start. I did not like that book. Punk 57 was good. I remember I liked it, but now that I look back at the book, it was okay, like it's good, but it's not like wow. But this one was a solid 5 stars. This is an age gap romance, so if you don't like that, maybe this is not the book for you, but honestly, like I went into the book thinking that I was not gonna like that trope, and I honestly like did not mind, but it's a really good book. Yeah, obviously Penelope Douglas has spicy books, so if you don't like spicy books, don't read this book. But if you do, then read it, and it's definitely an interesting book. But yeah, gave it 5 stars, still 5 stars. Okay, those are all the books that I'm going to be talking about today, you guys. Those are the first 10, so in the next video I'm going to give you 10 more, and so on, until I finish, because I have quite a few books that I've rated 5 stars. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know I've talked about these books so much in other videos, but I hope I entertained you for a while today. I hope you guys have an amazing week. That is the video. I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to subscribe down below and turn on the notification bell so you get notified when I upload more videos. And I will see you in my next one. Bye!
Oh, corks and bottles, ready to pop out. Oh, no more crying. We are knocking out another year of new loves.